The story of Van Cliburn is really fascinating. At the height of the Cold War, when America and the Soviet Union were almost on the verge of breaking out into battles, in 1957, the Soviets launched a satellite, the Sputnik satellite, into space. And American school children were practicing diving under their desks at school in case bombs started dropping from the sky. That was how much tension there was. The Soviets, meanwhile, decided to launch a music competition in 1958, the very first Tchaikovsky competition, partly to prove that not only were they ahead in space, but that they also had the best artists in the world. And so this competition was formed, and the Soviets, in fact, picked out who the winner was going to be ahead of time. It was a pianist named Lev Lasenko. And activities went along. Strangely, a skinny kid from Texas in America named Van Cliburn showed up and won. And this was unheard of. The entire world was stunned. He was shown in the press to be the conqueror of the Soviets, somehow an American winning the battle, the cultural battle. He never saw it that way, of course. He just simply wanted to play piano for people, and he loved people. And part of what happened in Moscow was that the audiences they fell in love with him. Khrushchev fell in love with him. Everyone fell in love with him. And the jury fell in love with his playing. So it was a huge turn of events, and seemed to signal that music somehow had this power, even in dark moments of history. Music had a power to help us to transcend the worst part of human relations and reach for something much greater. His career took off immediately. His recording of the Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto became the first classical recording ever to sell 1 million copies. He came home and had a parade in New York, down Broadway. First and only time a musician was ever honored in that way. But he was like a little animal on a treadmill, running from concert to concert, playing the same repertoire over and over again because audiences wanted to hear the winning pieces from Moscow. And he very quickly just sort of burned out, and things went downhill for him. But in that moment in history, amazing things happened. And I just found the story really fascinating and wanted to do more research about what happened, what went on behind the scenes, what were the competitors at the competition experiencing, what did the jury think, and so on. You know, it was a very interesting story to me. Well, he became an instant star, and people treated him almost, there was a fan club for Elvis Presley, the rock and roll musician, and they changed their name to the Van Cliburn Club. So, and he was treated like a rock and roll star. People running over to him in the street. He was not used to the attention, and he was not used to having to be on the road and perform over and over and over again. So the pressures became tremendous. It was such an unusual situation. You had the political tensions. You had a musician of extraordinary talent who also had a personality that reached out to people. It was kind of a moment that happens only once in history, I think. There was more of the background of the cultural relations between the two countries. Actually, the Soviets had already sent musicians to America to perform beginning around 1955. The Americans had sent performers to the Soviet Union. Violinist Isaac Stern, for example, was someone who was sent to the Soviet Union, and he explained it this way. He said, "We send them our Jewish violinists from Odessa, and they send us their Jewish violinists from Odessa." So there was interesting activities happening, but still the tension was there. And when young people in the Soviet Union looked at America, they saw cowboy movies, Western movies. They saw music that interested them. They started to mimic some of the slang, the language of Americans, the way Americans dressed and so on. So there was this intense interest happening. And it all exploded when Van Cliburn arrived and he performed. When he played at the Tchaikovsky competition, there wasn't an empty seat in the house, and people just stood and sat in the aisles trying to get in to hear him. So it was a situation that possibly can't be repeated, I'm afraid. But you can only hope, you know.